Hi, my name's Jason Shipman, and today I'm here with Anita Shipman, my wife, and Beth. Beth has some frequently asked questions that she's came up with, and she's going to go through those right now.
Okay. So what funeral homes do you guys own?
We own Shipman Funeral Home in Wagner and Shipman Funeral Home in Muskogee.
The one in Pryor, is that connected to y'all in any way?
It is part of our family, but that is separate from our two locations.
Okay. Can someone be viewed even if they have passed away of COVID?
Yes, they can. There are certain procedures that we're going to go through and make sure that everybody can do that in the safest manner.
Okay. Do you cremate animals?
We don't. That is a big question. We don't. Our crematory is licensed just to cremate human beings.
Do you recommend a crematory for families that do have animals that are needing that?
We have personally used a funeral, actually a pet funeral home and crematory in the Tulsa area to take care of our pets.
Okay. What is the purpose of embalming?
The purpose of embalming is for disinfection and temporary preservation of the remains, and under certain circumstances, there are state laws that would require that embalming take place to be able to hold someone for a period of time or to be able to have a delayed service.
How long does it normally take to embalm somebody?
That is a good question. A lot of people do ask that. On average, it can take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours, just depending on circumstances. But again, whenever you are being trained to become an embalmer, they say that it's very, very important that you don't base how quickly you can, provide that service, but more importantly, the attention to detail that you provide.
Now, on embalming, is it required by law?
It's not required by law. If a funeral home has climate-controlled facilities to be able to hold somebody, then embalming does not have to take place. But again, you'd have to check with your state laws that would apply to the embalming preparation. One of the biggest reasons, again, for the embalming would be, again, to be able to have a delayed service or ceremony. Most funerals that take place, there will be a day or two of viewing leading to the funeral, and this allows for us to not have to hold their loved one in climate-controlled facilities.
Okay. What do I do when a death occurs? Who do we call?
So when a death occurs and hospice is not involved, and you happen to be in a circumstance where you discover your loved one deceased at home, our best suggestion would be to contact the local police or sheriff's department and let them work through the process that they need to go through to be able to pronounce the person deceased.
Okay. What do I do with cremated remains?
With cremated remains, you can actually do several different things. You can scatter the ashes, you can bury the ashes, you can buy pendants and put the ashes inside of them. You can do scattering at the ocean. I mean, there are a variety of different things that you can do with cremated remains. Okay. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Jason?
Did you mention art glass?
Oh yeah, we can do art glass.
So art glass has become really popular, especially if there's families that want to divide a portion of the cremated remains. It just takes a nominal amount to be able to produce a custom piece of art glass, and they come in all shapes, colors, and sizes.
And on fingerprints, I know I have a lot of people ask, how long do you guys hold those on file?
We hold those on file as long as we're here. We have them digitally uploaded, and that way we can email them if somebody wants to get a tattoo. We also sell a variety of different fingerprint jewelry as well.
Okay. So if I'm cremated, but my spouse was buried in a casket, could I eventually be buried along with him?
Yeah, you can. Most cemeteries have no problem with allowing for an urn to be buried on top of an existing grave. Some cemeteries, they charge differently for that, but for the most part, it's become very, very popular. Again, some cemeteries where their family's been buried for generations, there's not a whole lot of plots available, so it has really enabled people to be able to still be buried with their loved ones.
Okay. And then as far as financial help, is there any financial help that can assist people? Is, payment plans? What do you do when something like that happens?
As far as payment plans, I know a lot of people, they experience a tragic loss and maybe there's not life insurance or anything like that. But our funeral home and most funeral homes are in a position to where they can't take what we call at-need payments. There are lending agencies similar to a bank that base things on credit that will allow someone that doesn't have life insurance to be able to make payments. But generally within the funeral home, that's something that you won't find very often.
So how can people get better prepared so they're not in that situation,
So the
which
best-
can be tough?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to be prepared is to be proactive and to be able to meet with a funeral home or a funeral director or someone who would help you pre-arrange your service. Pick out the funeral or memorial service, or just even if it's just a simple direct cremation, and they can break down a monthly payment plan that can help lock in the price of the cremation or the funeral service for the future.
Okay.
And those payment plans, generally, what is the price range in them?
They can range anywhere from a basic simple cremation at $50 a month up to pre-arranging. For example, my two children, we pay a little bit over $300 a month for two traditional funerals. But a lot of it is based on how many payments or how many years you make the payments that will adjust the monthly premiums for sure.
Okay. If a loved one dies out of state, can your local funeral home come and get them?
Absolutely. And we actually recommend the family call the local funeral home first and let us do all the work of contacting the needed people to get their loved one back to the state.
Okay.
And another thing is if you are put in that position to make a decision to help get your loved one from out of state back into your home state where the burial is going to take place, we ask that you make sure that you think the process through, make sure that you use the funeral home that you are committed to using. It is a lot easier to make one decision on a funeral home that can help you throughout the whole process and contact a local mortuary service in that other state versus being subject to realizing that you're going to have to move your loved one to another firm that can maybe better help you. So it's a way to be able to cut down the costs too.
Well, even you talk about that, contacting the right funeral home you want to use. I want to chime in and say how important it is that even if you have a loved one that dies locally, to contact the funeral home that you want to use, because once they're there, you can have extra expenses in order to move them to another funeral home that you want to use. So,
And I have one other statement I want to make regarding prepaid service that maybe has been taken out with our funeral home. For example, at Shipman's and Wagner, a big question is what happens if I eventually move out of state or I pass away out of state. Just kind of going back to the previous question, would be it's really important to make sure that you contact Shipman Funeral Home in that case so we can make the arrangements in the other state where the death has occurred. It's going to help everybody through that process a lot easier that way.
So on with that question, if somebody has a pre-need at a different funeral home and they've decided to use you guys, can they move that?
they can, absolutely. Yeah, all pre-needs are transferable from one funeral home to the next. So, yes.
Okay. And then how soon should the funeral home be contacted after a death has occurred?
A lot of that really depends on the circumstances surrounding the death. Whenever a death occurs in a hospice setting and their loved one passes away at home, then of course the hospice is already going to ask these questions. What funeral home do you all plan to use? And at that point, the hospice will make that call. If your loved one passes away unexpectedly and is, say, at the state medical examiner's office, at that point there's not a moment where I ever say that you called too soon. It's sometimes good to contact that funeral home that's going to be helping you and allow them to make preparations so they know what to expect.
And should somebody contact the funeral home before the death has occurred, does that help? If they don't have a pre-arrangement, go
Absolutely.
ahead and contact the funeral home, talk to the funeral director, and kind of get an idea of what's going to be expected of them.
That goes back to pre-planning. A lot of people take pre-planning into an idea that I need to do this years in advance and I need to be prepared financially way in advance, but there are those situations where someone has decided that I really feel like I need to do something even though I haven't done a whole lot regarding the pre-arrangement. contacting the funeral home, because the funeral home can help guide you guys or guide the family into the next step, whether it's just collecting simple death certificate information or at least being able to explain prices so they know what to expect.
Who is responsible for making funeral arrangements?
That's going to be the closest next of kin, especially when it comes to cremation. The legal next of kin will be the one who's going to sign the authorizations and approve everything that is being arranged.
Yep.
Okay. If I chose cremation, does this mean I won't be able to have a funeral? And would there be viewing?
I would say a large majority of the families that we serve that we do cremation choose to have some sort of a formal public viewing, and a lot of them will still have a complete traditional funeral, and really the only thing that separates those types of services is just simply that the burial is generally not going to take place the same day as the funeral.
Okay. Death certificates. How many do I need and where do I get them?
So you'll get the death certificates from the funeral home. We file all the paperwork to get the death certificate. Everybody's financial business is different. So depending upon your assets, depends upon how many death certificates you're going to need. Some people only need 2, others need 10 or 20. So we can get those, and they are $15 from the state.
Also, favorite lipsticks, nail polishes, should that be something that they bring in as well when they bring in their
We
clothing?
encourage it. Yeah, we encourage it, absolutely.
Okay.
And a picture. And that way Jason knows how to do the makeup, how to do the hair, and what they actually liked.
Okay. What all can be done with fingerprints?
So fingerprints can be made into charms. They can be made into rings. Some people have had the high resolution image made into a tattoo even. Right, yeah, right there, exactly.
Yes.
Yes, I was very thankful. Shipman's actually held on to my grandparents' fingerprints, and they've been gone longer than 10 years. And so when I had asked Anita if they had them on file, she found them. So I was very, very pleased. And so now I have my grandmother's and my grandfather's fingerprints tattooed on me. So that was very, very meaningful to me. So I was very glad that you guys done that. What is the difference between a memorial service versus a regular funeral service?
Yeah, a lot of people don't really think about this whenever they say memorial service or funeral service. So by definition, a memorial service is a ritual or ceremony conducted without the presence of a body, versus a funeral would be with the body present at that ceremony or ritual.
Okay. So I have a question, because oftentimes I'm asked, how did Jason decide he wanted to be a funeral director and embalmer? So what made you decide to go into this calling?
Well, I'm a second generation funeral director and embalmer, and I would say it was a very defining moment whenever I was around fourth grader. It's actually the summer of my fourth grade year, and I grew up in and around the funeral home, and I had witnessed a certain instance where my parents had helped the family. They walked into the lobby of the funeral home and they were extremely distraught. They were crying, and you could tell they needed help. And as I was observing, I guess, hearing some of the conversation that was going on here and there while I was in the office, I just noticed a sense of calm, and at the end of the arrangements, when they left, they were laughing, smiling, hugging, and I knew that they had made a difference in those people's lives. I didn't know exactly what all had happened, but I knew that whatever they did, I wanted to be able to be a part of that someday.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part about what you do?
I would say one of my favorite parts is the arts side of being an embalmer and being able to help somebody to be able to have closure, to be able to help erase that memory picture that they may have experienced when they found their loved one, or maybe whenever their loved one had deteriorated, on hospice. And it means a lot to me to be able to walk them through that process and to see that sense of relief whenever they see their loved one looking a whole lot better.
You have any other questions, Beth?
Well, that was pretty much it.
All right.
Well, let's discuss what our promotion is for our families that want to pre-plan.
Okay.
So for the month of January, we are offering, if you pre-plan, $300 off of a traditional service and then $200 off of a cremation pre-plan service. So that is really good savings to help you to get things in order.
And it's really something that we believe in, and it's something that we practice ourselves, and we just see how it helps people through that process, and it can just alleviate a whole lot of extra stress that's totally avoidable.
Absolutely.
So we thank you guys so much for joining us, and we do ask that if you have any questions or anything that maybe we didn't cover or we didn't elaborate enough on, be sure and just ask us in the comments section. We'd be happy to take a moment to be able to discuss that with you. And you can call us 24/7 if you ever have a question or a need. And we thank you all so much.